Most people remember Solomon as the king who asked for wisdom. Almost nobody remembers the old manuscript where his wisdom becomes a weapon against the spirits attached to the human body. That is the hidden turn. This is not the familiar Solomon of golden walls, royal judgment, and temple glory. This is Solomon standing in a darker tradition, holding a sealed ring, questioning invisible powers by name, and forcing them to confess where they touch human life. The text is called the Testament of Solomon. It is not a book most people hear in church. It is not part of the Bible for most Christian traditions. It survives as an ancient story attached to the name of Solomon, a strange apocryphal tradition where the king does something very specific. He does not simply defeat evil in a general way. He interrogates spirits one by one, asks for their names, asks what they do, asks which part of human life they disturb, and asks what power restrains them. And that is why this manuscript feels different from a normal legend. It does not only imagine spirits in the sky, it drags them down to the body, the throat, the eyes, the ribs, the joints, the stomach, the pulse, the breath, the hidden place where fear becomes pain. The old text does not say it names all spirits in existence. That would be too big, and it would be false. But it does something more disturbing. It gives the impression of a secret catalog, a hidden map of hostile powers, each one tied to a weakness in the human frame. It treats the body like a battlefield with names written in the margins. That is why the title matters. The Testament of Solomon that names the spirits attached to the human body is not just a scary phrase. It is the exact pressure point of the manuscript. The king is not only asking what these spirits are, he is asking where they attach, how they operate, and why human beings feel haunted not only in the mind, but in the flesh. Before we go deeper, understand the line we are walking. This is not modern medicine. This is not a clinical explanation. This is not a claim that every pain has a spirit behind it. What we are looking at is an ancient religious imagination, a world where sickness, temptation, fear, and bodily suffering were sometimes described as personal forces with names, ranks, and hidden assignments. But even if you read it only as literature, the idea is powerful. Because every human being knows what it means to feel attacked from inside the body. You can be calm in your mind, and then your chest tightens. You can believe you are safe, and then your stomach turns. You can know the truth, and still your hands shake. You can try to pray, think, sleep, forgive, or move on, and yet the body remembers something you cannot explain. The Testament of Solomon speaks into that ancient fear. It says, the body is not a neutral vessel. It is the place where invisible struggle becomes visible, and the story begins with a wound in the house of the king. In the tradition, Solomon is building the temple. That matters. The setting is not random. The story places the strangest spiritual conflict inside the work of building a holy house. Stones are rising. Labor is moving. The kingdom is focused on a sacred project. But then something hidden begins to drain a young worker. The boy weakens. His strength disappears. Something unseen visits him and takes from him. Solomon sees the damage before he sees the attacker. That is the first rule of this manuscript. The body shows the evidence before the invisible thing reveals its name. The king does not begin with a theory. He begins with a human being being emptied. He sees exhaustion. He sees wasting. He sees a life being reduced. Then he seeks power from heaven, and the story says he receives a ring, a seal, a symbol of authority placed in his hand. The ring is the turning point. Once Solomon has the seal, the hidden thing can no longer remain hidden. The spirit is dragged into speech. It must answer. It must name itself. It must explain what it does. That is the engine of the whole text. Name, function, attachment, restraint. Over and over, Solomon forces the invisible into structure. The chaos becomes a list. The fear becomes testimony. The shadow becomes a named force. That is why this manuscript is so clickable for a modern audience, even outside religion. It gives shape to the feeling that something invisible is pressing on human life. A secular person might not accept the spiritual system, but the emotional truth is instantly recognizable. The body can feel invaded by fear, appetite, exhaustion, anger, compulsion, grief, and memory. Ancient people gave those forces names. The Testament of Solomon turns those names into a courtroom. Solomon is not portrayed as a man screaming into darkness. He is a king making the darkness answer. And the first shocking thing is how many of these spirits do not present themselves as abstract evil. They present themselves through damage. One troubles the body. One attacks the mind. One works through desire. One works through confusion. One weakens the limbs. One brings pain to the inner organs. One disturbs the breath. One creates fear in the night. The text is strange because it refuses to keep evil far away. It brings it close, too close. close enough to touch the skin, close enough to enter the sleep, close enough to disturb the place where a person thinks he is most alone. And if you stay with the manuscript, you start to see the pattern. Solomon is not merely collecting names for curiosity. He is learning the architecture of vulnerability. The ancient question is not only who is attacking, the deeper question is where human beings are open. That is the part people miss. The text is obsessed with openings, an opened desire, an opened fear, an opened wound, an opened weakness, an opened doorway in the body. In the world of the Testament, spirits do not attach to humanity as a vague cloud. They attach through entry points. They work through the places where human life is most exposed. This is why Solomon keeps asking questions. He is not satisfied with the name alone. A name without a function is just a label. A name with a function becomes a map. If the spirit says it bends the body, Solomon asks how. If it says it enters through desire, Solomon asks by what authority it is restrained. If it says it harms the eyes, the throat, the nerves, or the inner places, Solomon forces it into confession. The whole text moves like an ancient interrogation room, and that is the hook the video has to cash fast. The Testament of Solomon is not frightening because it says there are spirits. Many ancient texts say that. It is frightening because it makes them specific. Specific names, specific afflictions, specific body parts, specific weaknesses, specific restraints. That level of detail creates the feeling of a forbidden file, not a sermon, not a symbol, a file. And once you understand that, the body in the title becomes the real story, not the soul in a vague spiritual way. The body, the part you cannot ignore, the part that wakes tired, the part that hungers, the part that shakes, the part that aches, the part that carries temptation before the mind has words for it. The old Greek word behind the thumbnail idea is soma, body. It is a simple word, but in this context it becomes heavy. The body is the place where invisible powers become measurable. You can doubt a thought, you can argue with an idea, but when something touches the body, the argument changes. The body gives testimony. The Testament of Solomon turns that testimony into a spiritual list. Now watch what the story does with Solomon. In the Bible, Solomon is famous for wisdom. In this manuscript, wisdom is not only the ability to answer hard questions. Wisdom is the ability to force hidden things to answer him. That is a darker form of wisdom. Most people want wisdom that makes them feel enlightened. This text imagines wisdom as exposure. Solomon becomes wise because he can see what other people cannot see. He can name what other people only suffer. He can make the hidden order speak out loud. That is why the manuscript feels like it belongs behind a locked door. It takes the most celebrated wise king in Israel and places him in a world of seals, names, spirits, afflictions, and bodily attack. It does not erase his wisdom, it weaponizes it. The ring in the story is important because it represents delegated authority. Solomon does not win by being curious. He wins because heaven gives him a seal. The text is saying that the hidden world cannot be mastered by intelligence alone. A brilliant mind is not enough. Royal power is not enough. Even Solomon needs a sign of authority beyond himself. That is a key retention beat. The wisest man in the story still needs help from above before the spirits will speak. So the manuscript is not just about spirits. It is also about the limits of human control. Solomon can build. Solomon can rule. Solomon can judge. Solomon can command workers in stone. But when the invisible begins draining a body, he cannot solve it like an ordinary political problem. He has to enter a different order of authority. That is why the first spirit confession matters so much. Once the hidden attacker is forced to speak, the whole world of the story opens. If one unseen power can be named, then maybe others can be named too. If one affliction has a hidden pattern, maybe the body itself is full of patterns no one has been taught to read. This is where the Testament becomes a catalog. Some spirits are tied to lust. Some are tied to deception. Some are tied to bodily pain. Some are tied to childbirth fears. Some are tied to the movement of the stars. Some appear like winds, beasts, shadows, or strange heavenly powers. Some sound almost medical. Some sound moral. Some sound cosmic. And that mixture is what makes the text so unsettling. It does not separate the body, the mind, the heavens, and morality into clean modern boxes. It sees them as connected. A weakness in the flesh can be a spiritual opening. A temptation in the mind can affect the body. A movement in the heavens can be imagined as pressure on the human world. Everything is joined in one terrifying system. Modern readers may reject that system, but they should not miss what it reveals. Ancient people were trying to explain why human beings feel divided against themselves, why the body wants what the mind rejects, why fear enters without permission, why sickness feels like an invasion, why desire can feel like a voice, why pain can make a person feel spiritually surrounded. The Testament of Solomon answers with names. That is the ancient move. Name the thing, drag it into the light, make it confess, then learn what restrains it. This is why the text can feel almost like a forbidden manual. It is not content to say evil exists. It wants a procedure. Solomon asks the spirit where it works. Then he asks what angel, word, power, or sign can stop it. The result is a strange rhythm of exposure and counterforce. The spirit reveals the wound, then it reveals the limit. That rhythm is one of the strongest retention mechanisms in the story, because every confession leaves the viewer with a new question. What is the next name? What part of the body comes next? What does that spirit do? What restrains it? And why would an old manuscript preserve this at all? The answer may be connected to the world that produced it. Late ancient religious imagination was not neat. Jewish, Christian, Greek, Egyptian, and magical traditions often crossed paths in manuscripts, prayers, amulets, stories, and protective formulas. People lived in a world where the body was fragile, medicine was limited, death was close, and invisible causes were taken seriously. In that world, a text like the Testament of Solomon gave structure to terror. It said the unseen is not random. It can be named, it can be ranked, it can be questioned, it can be resisted. That is a powerful promise. But the story also carries a warning. The same Solomon who receives authority over spirits is still not portrayed as untouchable forever. The wider Solomon tradition always contains a fracture. The wise king can still be pulled by desire, by pride, by foreign altars, by divided loyalty. The man who names spirits can still be vulnerable. That makes the testament more disturbing, not less. Because if Solomon can command spirits and still fall into danger, then knowledge alone cannot save the body. Names are not enough. Power is not enough. Wisdom is not enough if the person holding it becomes careless. The manuscript gives Solomon authority, but it does not turn him into a machine. He remains human. He remains embodied. He remains open to weakness. That is the deeper irony. The king who studies attachment is himself attachable. The king who forces spirits to confess still has a body. The king who builds a holy house still lives inside flesh. And that is why this story reaches beyond ancient superstition. It asks a question that still lands. What if the strongest attacks are not the ones that come from outside your life, but the ones that find the weak point already inside you? Not a shadow at the gate, a pressure at the wound, not a voice in the sky, a pull in the appetite, not a shadow in a cave, a fear in the chest. That is the psychological power of the Testament of Solomon. It turns invisible pressure into characters. It takes experiences that feel internal and imagines them as invaders that can be questioned. For a believer, the text may feel like a warning about spiritual warfare. For a historian, it may feel like a window into late ancient religion. For a skeptic, it may feel like an ancient map of human anxiety. But for everyone, it touches the same nerve. The body is not silent. The body tells the truth before the mind can explain it. Now look again at the title, the Testament of Solomon that names the spirits attached to the human body. The power is in the attachment. Attached means close. Attached means not far away. Attached means the thing is not merely seen from a distance. It is connected, clinging, pressing, feeding, disturbing, using the body as its point of contact. That is much stronger than saying spirits around humanity. Around is vague. Attached is personal. Around is scenery. Attached is a problem. Around can be ignored. Attached demands a question. How did it attach? Where did it attach? What does it want? What breaks the attachment? That is the exact curiosity gap this video has to carry. The ancient text answers in its own strange way. It does not speak like a modern therapist. It does not speak like a hospital. It speaks like a king in a sacred interrogation, forcing hidden beings to explain their assignments. Some confessions point toward the body directly. Others point toward passions and behaviors that eventually rule the body. A spirit tied to desire does not need to break bones to control a person. It can pull the eyes. It can excite the imagination. It can weaken the will. The body becomes the doorway because desire is never only mental. It is felt. A spirit tied to fear does not need a sword. It can seize the breath. It can tighten the throat. It can turn night into a chamber of dread. The body becomes the proof because fear moves through pulse, sweat, and muscle. A spirit tied to sickness does not need philosophy. It attacks the ordinary confidence of living in flesh. The body becomes the battlefield because weakness makes every person aware that they are not self-sustaining. The Testament understands that vulnerability is physical. That is why it survives as more than a weird story. It is weird, yes, But weird texts survive when they preserve a human nerve. And the nerve here is simple. People want to know what is touching them. They want a name for the pressure. They want a reason for the suffering. They want a boundary against what feels unseen. The Testament of Solomon offers a dramatic, ancient answer. The wise king can make the hidden thing speak. Now, this is also where weaker videos would ruin the topic. They would say the manuscript proves everything. They would claim the Bible removed it. They would claim every illness is caused by a named spirit. They would promise secret answers or forbidden rituals. That is not the lane here. The strong version is more precise. This is an apocryphal Solomon tradition. It is not ordinary canon. It reflects an ancient world where spiritual powers, bodily suffering, and sacred authority were imagined together. It names spirits in relation to human weakness. It shows Solomon using divine authority to interrogate them. That is enough. You do not need to fake anything. The real manuscript is strange enough. The real hook is this. An ancient text remembered Solomon not only as a king of wisdom, but as a king who made hidden powers confess how they attach to human life. That is the buried pattern of the text. The boy being drained, the ring, the interrogation, the names, the body, the restraints, the fall of Solomon. And the strongest proof object is the ring because it turns wisdom into command. In the story, Solomon is not merely learning secrets, he is enforcing order. The seal makes the invisible submit to speech. This is why sealed books, rings, names, and bodies keep repeating in ancient religious imagination. A seal means boundary. A name means access. A body means contact. A confession means control. The Testament brings all of them together. Seal, name, body, confession. That is the skeleton of the whole video. The spirits are attached to the body because the body is where human life can be pressured. Solomon names them because ancient authority begins by refusing to let the pressure remain nameless. The manuscript preserves the list because people have always wanted to know whether suffering has a hidden order. Solomon begins with authority, but the manuscript slowly becomes a mirror. The more spirits he names, the more the viewer starts to realize the list is not only about them, it is about us. Every body has weak points. Every person has habits that feel stronger than reason. Every mind has fears that return. Every life has a place where pressure keeps finding the same opening. The ancient writer turns those openings into spiritual geography. That is why the text feels uncomfortable. It does not flatter the viewer. It suggests that human beings are not as closed as they think. We are permeable. We are influenceable. We are not sealed by default. That is a dark idea. And Solomon becomes interesting because he is the king who receives a seal. He has what ordinary people do not have in the story: a sign that can close the opening, a sign that can force the hidden power out of silence, a sign that turns the body from helpless territory into a place where order can be restored. But the seal also raises the most frightening question in the manuscript: what happens to people without it? That question is never fully comfortable. It is why protective prayers, sacred names, amulets, and exorcistic traditions grew so strongly in ancient religion. People were not asking abstract questions. They were asking how to survive a world where the invisible was believed to press on the visible every day. The Testament of Solomon belongs to that atmosphere, not because it is simple, because it is anxious. It comes from a world where the body was vulnerable and the unseen felt crowded. Now, a modern viewer might say, this is just how ancient people talked before science. That is a fair reading. But even then, the manuscript still matters, because it shows that people were trying to connect pain, desire, fear, and moral weakness into a single story. They were trying to understand why human beings are so easily seized. That question did not disappear. Only the vocabulary changed. Today, people say trauma, compulsion, addiction, anxiety, stress, impulse, disorder, pattern, nervous system, intrusive thought. Ancient texts said spirit, name, attachment, seal, authority, restraint. The language changed. The experience did not vanish. People still want to know why they are not fully masters of themselves. That is why this video can pull both believers and skeptics. It does not need the viewer to accept every claim literally in order to feel the tension. The tension is universal. Something can live close to you, affect you, shape you, and remain unnamed. The Testament of Solomon is an ancient fantasy of naming, and naming is powerful because unnamed suffering feels infinite. Once a thing has a name, it has an edge. Once it has an edge, it can be faced. Once it can be faced, it can be questioned. Solomon stands at that edge. He does not heal the whole world in the story. He does not erase all suffering. He does not become invulnerable, but he does make the hidden order speak, and that is why the manuscript keeps pulling people back. It gives the viewer the feeling of standing behind the king as the next spirit is brought forward. What is your name? Where do you work? Whom do you harm? What stops you? Every answer opens another door. The body becomes the archive, the manuscript becomes the courtroom, Solomon becomes the examiner, and the spirits become evidence. This is also why the ending cannot be only, "Here are some weird names." That would waste the topic. The deeper ending is Solomon himself, because the tradition of Solomon is always split between glory and collapse. The same king who builds the temple also becomes the warning about divided desire. The same king remembered for wisdom is also remembered for being led away. The same figure who commands spirits in one manuscript is surrounded by weakness in the larger tradition. That means the final lesson is not that secret knowledge makes a person safe. It is the opposite. The manuscript may name the spirits, but it also shows that a human body remains a doorway if the person forgets humility. The ring can command, the name can expose, the seal can restrain, but desire can still return. Pride can still open the gate. The body can still become the place of contest. That is the mature version of the story. Not childish fear, not grotesque horror imagery, not fake forbidden claims. A sober ancient idea. Human beings are embodied. Embodied beings are vulnerable. Vulnerability creates openings. Openings invite pressure. Wisdom begins when the pressure is named. Freedom begins when the name does not rule you. That is why the Testament of Solomon feels like a buried text. It does not belong neatly in modern categories. It is part legend, part exorcistic imagination, part royal fantasy, part spiritual anatomy, part warning about the weakness of even the wisest king. And when you strip away the strange surface, one idea remains. The body is where the invisible becomes personal. That is what Solomon is looking at. Not an abstract shadow, not a faraway enemy, not a myth kept safely in the past. A force close enough to affect a hand, a throat, an eye, a wound, a hunger, a fear, a breath. The manuscript names these forces because ancient people believed naming was the first act of dominion. You do not rule what you cannot name. You do not resist what you cannot recognize. You do not close an opening you refuse to admit exists. So the next time you hear Solomon described only as the wise king who judged between two mothers, remember that another tradition gave him a much darker courtroom. Not a courtroom with citizens, a courtroom with spirits. Not a dispute over property, a dispute over the human body. Not a verdict spoken to people, a command spoken into the hidden world. That is the buried Solomon most people never meet. The Solomon who asks the invisible to identify itself. The Solomon who sees the body as contested ground. The Solomon who learns that every hidden pressure wants to remain unnamed. And the Solomon who discovers that naming the darkness is only the beginning. Because the final question is not whether Solomon could make spirits speak. The final question is whether human beings can recognize the attachments they have already learned to call normal. Comment body if you want the next buried manuscript breakdown to go even deeper into how ancient texts mapped invisible forces onto human life. And subscribe to the Buried Testament, because the most disturbing stories are not always the ones removed from the Bible. Sometimes they are the ones preserved at the edge of it, waiting for someone to ask why they were written at all.